Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Trails Radio Show. I hope you all are doing well. Today, our special guest is actor and acting teacher, Mr. Eric Morris. Thank you very much, and join us in a minute. Okay, Eric, my first question to you is, how did your career begin? You started out as an actor. How did that begin?
Well, it's interesting. I was not going to... acting had not occurred to me. Both my brothers were in the business, theater, actually. And I grew up knowing that they were, working in community theater in Chicago. And I even appeared in a play when I was 5, Walk On, holding my brother's hand. Funny story. And I kept looking at the audience. I wasn't an actor, I was 5 years old, and my brother, Ed Morris, Maury is his name, he said, we got off stage to look at the audience. They're not there. And I looked at him, I said, but they are there. And that was my first experience on the stage. I was 5 years old. At any rate, I was going to be a photographer. I graduated from high school, and I started college, and I dropped out, but I hadn't actually committed to going to college yet. And my brother Phil came into Chicago with a play, a musical, Finian's Rainbow. And so he invited me backstage the first opening night, and I stood in the wings, and the overture started, and the dancers jumped on stage. My eyes got as big as 2 fried eggs, egg yolks. And I went backstage every night for the 4 months that the play was in Chicago. And to this time in time, I've never done anything else except pursue acting, pursue my career, becoming a professional, going to college, graduating with a theater degree, from Northwestern University. I have never done anything else except a few part-time jobs to see me through college. But I've never done anything else except pursue acting, later teaching, writing, directing, doing work in, behind the camera. So I've done nothing else my entire life after that first night standing in the wings and watching the opening of the play, that my brother came to Chicago, Finian's Rainbow. So that's how I started.
Absolutely. That's where the acting bug bit you. And you're still in it.
It bit me. And it's a very funny story about the bug. When I first came, the first night I was there, my brother, who was a production stage manager for the show, introduced me to his assistant stage manager, whose name was Norman Shelley, also an actor and understudying one of the characters too. And so my brother introduced me to Norman Shelley, and Norman said, "Be careful, kid. There's a bug that flies around here, and if you get bit by it, it's fatal." So I looked at him confused. I was confused. And I looked at him, and I looked at my brother, and my brother said, "He's talking about the acting bug. You get bit by it, and it's fatal." I said, "Oh, that'll never happen to me. I'm going to be a photographer." And then that first night, the overture came up, the dance was on stage, and for 4 months, every night, I went backstage to watch the show. I got familiar and friendly with all the actors. And that was it for me. I was bit, and it was fatal. To this time and time, I'm almost a century old. Well, I'm 90. I'm going to be 90 this year. Almost a century. I have 10 more years to go to make it a century. And I love what I do, and I love my choice. Not a lot of people in the world have the luxury of choosing what they wanted to do for their whole life. I feel very fortunate, very gifted, and very grateful that I found my calling.
Absolutely.
So that's the story of my beginnings, okay?
Absolutely. And now we'll focus on your teaching acting now, the Eric Morris method. No acting, please. How did that begin?
I call it a system. The Eric Morris system. Like Stanislavski called his approach a system also. It was Lee Strasberg that dubbed the system the word method. It was Lee that came up with that word method. However, my system is a definitive, definite method approach. Yes. And so, well, you want to know how I started teaching? That's also an interesting story.
Okay.
I was studying with a man by the name of Martin Landau, an actor, a successful actor. He won the Academy Award when he played in that. When he did the vampire, the guy who played the vampire, Bela Lugosi. He won a supporting award for that. But anyway, he was a great teacher, and I was studying with him. And he got a big role in Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor, and that he was going to go to Italy to do that, maybe be gone for a whole year. And so I was really at a loss, you know. I was cut off in midstream. It was the first teacher that I ever worked with that answered the question I had. How do you do that? That's the biggest 3-letter word in the English language related to acting. Every acting teacher I had before Marty, who was a Lee Strasberg devotee, he was at the Actors Studio, and he was coached by Lee Strasberg. And so every acting teacher I had before him, I'd say, well, how do you do that? And they couldn't tell me. They would say, oh, well, you remember it. You think about it. You recall it. That is not a process. That is not a how. That is not a how. That's not how you do it. So anyway, when I got into Marty's class, I always say I learned A, B, C, D, E, about 5 letters of the alphabet. And those 5 letters, metaphorically, I was able to spell words, so to speak. And there was the beginning of a how. How do you do it? And then I learned the how. I kept learning the how. And then he went to do Cleopatra. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, you are. And so I was without a teacher. So Jack Nicholson was also in Marty's class. He started a week after I did with Marty. And we were very close. And he called me. He said, "Eric, have you found anybody to work with yet?" I said, "Oh, Jack, I'm devastated. I don't have the money to go to New York to study with Lee, so I'm devastated." He said, "Well, I heard about this woman, Donna Roman Drew, and I'm going to visit her class. You want to come with me?" I said, "Yeah, Jack, let's go." So we went up there. She was teaching out of her apartment. The apartment building that Marilyn Monroe also lived in, that apartment building, but not at that time. But her name was Donna Roman Drew. She's married to an actor whose name was Drew something. I don't know. Anyway, we were sitting on wooden folding chairs, and I was watching what she was doing and with everything. And it was anything that I wanted to see. It was general. It was non-specific. So I poked Jack with my elbow. I said, "Jack, I got to get the fuck out of here. I got to get out of here. This is." He said, "Eric, don't be rude. Let's wait till they take a break." So we waited till she broke for she took a break, intermission kind of break, and we split. We got out of there. So that was it. But later, Jack, after I started teaching, Jack came and worked with me for a couple of years. So that was good, you know. Anyway, I'll tell you how I started teaching. Also, everything has a kind of a serendipitous beginning in life. Serendipity. I was living in Burbank with my first wife, and I was contemplating jumping off the roof. Not really. I was very depressed about not having a teacher at that time because Marty left for Rome to do Cleopatra. He had to play the general in that. So I get a telephone call from a woman by the name Ann O'Hara. Her name was Ann O'Hara, Ann Raymond. She had about 3 names. She kept changing her name. She was a student in Marty's class who I worked with a couple of scenes with, Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, hi, Eric. How you doing? Have you found a teacher yet?" I said, "Ann, I'm very depressed. I can't find anybody. Can't find anybody that teaches like Marty did. There's no how in these teachers." She said, "Well, why don't you start your own class? I learned as much from you when I was in Marty's class by working with you as I did from him. Why don't you start a class? I'll be your first student." I said, "Oh, Ann, I'm not a teacher. I'm an actor. I don't want to teach acting. Them that can do and them that can't teach. I don't want to. I'm an actor." She said, "Well, if you haven't found a teacher, don't you think you can promote your own growth by teaching?" Bing, a light went off in my head. A little bulb flashed in my head. I said, yeah, that is a possibility. So I started working with Ann O'Hara, Ann Raymond, Ann O'Hara, and I had 1 student, then I had 2. She brought somebody, then I had 3, and then I had 2 again, and then I got to 4, and then I had 3 again, and I got to 5, and I had 2 again, and I paid for a space to teach in. For 7 months, it's out of my pocket. But finally, Kurt Conway, who was a Broadway actor who was blacklisted because of that HUAC, House Un-American Act. You're too young for this. House Un-American Activity Committee blacklisted him because he was a member of the Communist Party. Anyway, he had to turn to teaching to make a living because he couldn't act anywhere. So he came to called Marty, who had studied with him at one time, and he said, "Do you know anybody in your class who could teach beginners?" And Marty said, "Yeah, Eric Morris. He's the leader in the class. He does more work." Yeah. So Kurt came to visit me in my class, wrote me a note saying, "I have to leave early, but don't take it personally. I think you are a master teacher, and I would love for you to work for me." So I started working for Kurt, and I certainly fed me students, and I got 10, 12, 15 students, and that's how my career as a teacher started, and the rest is history. I wrote my first book in 1972 with the help of Joan Hotchkiss, who was at the Actors Studio, and that's another story. I got lots of stories. As a matter of fact, one of my 10 books that I've written is called My Hollywood Stories. Trey, if you got that, it would be a bonanza for you. A bonanza. All the people's paths who crossed mine in the 70 years, 65, 70 years I've been in the market, teaching for 61 years, it would be a bonanza of discovery for you. It's called My Hollywood Stories. It's one of my 10 books. And it's all written about actors, producers, directors. It's about actors, written about actors, written by actors. And it's a wonderful, fun read. It's a coffee table book. It's not an acting book, but it is about acting and about directing and about producing and about the business. So it's a fun read. My latest book, I wrote during the lockdown, during COVID-19. Mm-hmm. It's the first book I've ever written in 4.5 months. Most of my books take years. Some of them took 5 years. One of them took 11 years. But this one took 4.5 years, and it's called The Actor's Other Selves. Just came out 2 months ago. And it's called The Actor's Other Selves, Using Subpersonalities as an Acting Approach, as an acting tool. So it's my latest book. It's my 10th book on acting. And so anyway, that's how I started teaching, and I'm still teaching. I'm doing 2 Zoom classes a week. I have one tonight at 5:30. I have one on Tuesday at 10 in the morning, and I do some Skype, and I'm writing my next book, actually. I started